Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be joined by NASCAR Truck Series legend Mike Skinner is set to join us. We'll talk about Mike's awesome career in the Truck Series and also what he's done in all levels of NASCAR, including what he could tell us about David and their relationship. Should be a great show. We're looking forward to chatting with Mike in just a moment. David Starr joins us first. David, appreciate it as always, man. Thanks for joining us. We're getting close to Daytona now, aren't we?
Dude, it's just right around the corner, and I wish, I had some news to share, but hopefully by our next podcast next week, we'll have some news. Hopefully, it's pretty stressful nights, and I'm excited and I'm stressed and every emotion you can imagine, but just been working hard. Just thank God we have some great partners, and looking forward to announcing something and getting the series, getting on with the new season. And man, it's pretty cool to have Mike Skinner on here with us. I'm excited about us getting to interview him.
Yes, and we'll have you introduce Mike in just a moment. I want to bring in Dominic Aragon from the RacingExperts.com. Dominic, always good to have you, man. What's happening?
Man, always good to be a part of this show and a part of this presentation, man. Just really excited to be here. And, man, for our fans, too, we've got some stickers. I got to thank Jimmy and Kathy Stevens out of Sign Effects here in Grants, New Mexico. We've got some Let's Go Racing stickers. So
all right,
if you'd like to get some stickers, email us at the email show, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get something figured out and get you some stickers while they last.
Yes, while supplies last is the key to that right there. And we'll certainly be glad to get those out there, as well as some other stuff we're working on here. So definitely stay plugged for that. David, we're bringing in Mike to the show, and Mike Skinner. And, I mean, what a legend of what he's done in his NASCAR career. I mean, there's so many different ways that we could go with this. Tell us about, before we bring him in, tell us about Mike and what you know from your perspective, David.
Oh, man, his nickname's the Gunslinger. Anybody's got a nickname, the Gunslinger. That just kind of says it all. But, man, what a great guy, a fierce competitor. Just growing up, and when I first came into the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, man, Mike was the guy. You know what I mean? He was the guy for a long time. And if you were going to win a race, you had to beat Mike Skinner. And, man, the guy, he could lay a lap down, and not just lay a lap down. I'm talking about win poles. Not just barely winning a pole. I'm talking about, half second, a second. I mean, the guy's incredible, and as I came into the sport, and I watched him on TV for a long time before I made it into NASCAR, and, just the name Mike Skinner caught my attention. But once I got in the sport and was involved in it and got to meet Mike and know what a great guy he was. But, man, what a fierce competitor. And it's what an honor it is to have him on our show. But he, you just look at him, I was kind of doing some research on him. I know him well, raced against him. He's won a lot of races. And, man, if you just look at what he's done in our industry, I mean, the impact he's had in our industry and the things he has done, man, what a career, So I'm excited to bring him on and just we could have 3 or 5 shows with Mike Skinner, but we only have an hour here. So, it's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, certainly. Mike, appreciate you joining us, man. Thanks for stopping by here on Let's Go Racing.
All good, man. It's my pleasure.
David, where do we want to start with Mike here?
So, Mike, man, first of all, it's an honor to have you, buddy. It's awesome to see you. You're looking good. Man, we had Jeff O'Dine on last week, and man, there's so much to Mike Skinner, and just want to kind of ask you, man, how did all this start? How did Mike Skinner get involved in stock car racing? Were you a kid? Was your dad involved? How did how did that develop? And, and tell us how do you become this big legend in NASCAR? I can't wait to hear the story, how it all started.
I don't know about big legend, but it's a crazy story, actually. I had a 71 Roadrunner.
Awesome car.
Beautiful car.
Absolutely.
It was one of the fastest cars in town, and I was always out running the cops and doing crazy shit. And I put a new set of tires on it, and I'm driving around this road called Richmond Road in Susanville, California.
Okay.
And I'm running probably 100 miles an hour, and I go through this corner, and there was 2 cars coming straight at me. And there was these guys, they were drag racing, and it just kind of eased me off the road, or I was going to have a head-on collision.
Right.
Long story short, wrecked the car, got all tangled up in a barbed wire fence, and the insurance company totaled the car. And my friend, Alan Kostick, which has been passed away for a long time now, he said, "You are a crazy son of a gun." And he goes, you're always the fastest guy around. You don't take no crap from nobody. And you drive amazingly. And why don't we we called them hard tops back then, David. Okay. That's how long ago it was. It was probably before you were born. Anyway, he said, let's build a race car out of that thing. And so I'm like, okay, why not? I bought the car back from the insurance company, put a roll cage in it, took all the glass out and stuff. And so off to the Fairgrounds Raceway. It was a half-mile dirt track, fast track in Susanville at the Fairgrounds. My very first race, they made me start in the back, and I passed everybody in 2 or 3 laps and drove away. And I came around and got the white flag, and there wasn't even anybody on the same straightaway with me. And I came off of turn 2, and the right front ball joint broke. And it was something we missed. It happened in the original crash, and we didn't catch it. And it was obviously cracked, and it finally just broke. Car flipped end over end 3 times, rolled, I guess, 1.5 or 2.5 times, landed on its roof. I'm laying there upside down. I'd never been strapped in a race car before with an aircraft seat belt. I'm racing in cowboy boots. We didn't get a chance to move the battery like you're supposed to. So the battery exploded, battery acid's dripping down on my face, and I'm embarrassed, and I'm pissed, and I'm hanging upside down. And so I finally got the seatbelt, jerked the seatbelt open, fell on the roof, which pissed me off even more. And I crawled out from underneath the car, just had a small little burn on my face from the battery acid. I was so embarrassed and so mad, I kicked the side of the car and broke my big toe. The broken bone, I got out of the crash.
Oh, man.
We said, well, that was fun. It lasted like 1 race. So we took the car out to Janesville, and it sat there for 4 or 5 weeks. They ran 2 or 3 races. And my buddy, Rudy McGowan, says, hey, that thing shut off when it started flipping, didn't it? I said, yeah. He said, well, the motor's probably okay. And I said, well, let's go see if it'll start. And so we put, of course, there was no oil or nothing in it. We put oil back in it, and took a 5-gallon can of gas because the fuel tank was tore all to pieces. And we cranked it up. Thing smoked and bounced and farted a couple times, and it sounded good. So we tied that car with logging chains to a big tree and took 2 4-wheel drive trucks and straightened that car back out enough to get it to roll, and took it, and we immediately started engineering front end geometry, and we put a bunch of camber in the front, and we got the caster set the way we wanted it. And we said, let's take it back. The body was beat all to pieces, but we got the wheels all lined up.
Right.
And we went on and won the next 6 races with it, and won the championship, and didn't even run all the races. So it was kind of like, okay, well, I thought I was going to be a billiards player, but I'm better just racing, and it's more exciting. And the girls like it.
Absolutely. Hey, Skinner, what a cool story. And the gunslinger was born. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, really, unbelievable, man. So the first race, you got just typical Skinner, half lap lead, okay? Your ball joint breaks, car flips over. You finally get out of the seat belts. You land on the roof. You're embarrassed. You're madder than hell. You kick the race car. You break your toe. And then y'all go stretch this thing out with 2 4-wheel drives at a tree.
Yeah.
And y'all engineer, I can only imagine the suspension. And y'all get back in that thing and start kicking some butt, winning 6 races, won the championship. And Mike Skinner, the gunslinger, is born. What a great story, man.
Oh, it was
Wow.
crazy. That's back in the early days when, nowadays it's really, really hard for a driver to carry a car. You know that
Absolutely.
as well
Absolutely.
as anybody. And back then, man, we were all crazy. I mean, we were so passionate about what we did that we just felt like we had to win. There was no choice. There was no
Right.
second was no good. And so we just really was very, like I said, very passionate, and we ran hard. I mean, and I'm telling you, man, we would drink beer, we smoked pot, we were a bunch of renegades. We partied, and then we would race and be dead serious about racing. We worked hard. We would literally go down there on Thursday and Friday, and I'd run the road grader one week and drive the water truck the next week and help prepare the racetrack so we could put on a show on Saturday night at the fairgrounds. And the racers themselves would go prepare the place, and we would be all good buddies then, and then we all hated each other on race night when we had to race each other.
Dude, what an awesome. Did you ever think, when you're preparing the racetrack and running those cars back then, that you would ever turn out to be NASCAR legend Mike Skinner and be teammates with Dale Earnhardt and be almost winning the Daytona 500 and just, end up with all the, you had no idea what was about to happen years looking forward to Mike Skinner. What a cool story though, man. Unbelievable.
Really didn't. And my ex-wife now, the mother to my youngest son, she told me, she said, we need to move back east. There was tough times out there. It was kind of a recession back in the late 70s.
Right.
And so we decided that we're going to cash it in. I had a well drilling business.
Okay.
And we drilled water wells. And I wanted to be a billiards player. And when I got the racing bug, I decided that was way more important. And so we headed in 1983. We headed back east to North Carolina, and
it's amazing story, Mike. Because I think if I remember right, I saw this that I think your first NASCAR race was 1986. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So man, absolutely. Go ahead.
In 83. We went back there, and Terry Elledge, which you probably remember Terry Elledge, he was instrumental with John Dysinger and a lot of the guys at Bill Davis in developing the Phase 9 TRD, the first Toyota race NASCAR engine.
Absolutely.
Basically the first pushrod engine that they had built. And so he gave me a job. He was the engine builder at Petty Enterprises.
Wow.
So I worked in the engine shop at Petty Enterprises the first year when Richard and Kyle was still there. The STP sponsorship was on the 43 car, and Kyle drove the 7 car with 711 on it.
711, yeah. Wow.
And so that I worked in the engine shop. I ground blocks and radius rods, and I did a lot of stuff that today the CNC machine does it all.
Absolutely.
Back then we used to sit there with a grinder and a set of engines all day.
Absolutely.
And customize these engines. And then when they Kyle went to Mike Curb, or Richard did, Kyle went to the Wood Brothers, Richard went to Mike Curb Racing.
Remember that.
They left Level Cross, and I went to work for a guy named Cliff Stewart. And we had this young guy that come and drove our race car. His name was Rusty Wallace. And
big old afro hair, I'm sure.
I was the rear tire changer on the Gatorade car, the 88 car, for Rusty Wallace's rookie year.
Come on, Mike, I never knew that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. We actually won the pit crew championship that year.
Wow.
Rockingham they used to have.
So you were the rear tire changer and y'all won the pit stop competition.
Yep.
Go figure that, man. Wow. That was short-lived, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so Rusty, he would tear the car up every week, like most rookies do. And we was old Hutch cars, old rear steer Hutch cars. We'd take that thing back, and Barry Owen and Barry basically trained me. We
Gary
sort of
Owens.
power that stuff all back out and straighten it back out and take her for the next week. We had 6 guys, and coming from Petty Enterprises, where it was a big enterprise,
Oh yeah.
we went over to Cliff Stewart's. We had 6 guys. Darrell Bryant was the crew chief, and we took turns doing everything. I'd be packing wheel bearings one day, doing body work or paint the next day, helping set the car up or straightening the frame the following day, and changing tires on the weekend.
Hey, Mike, what's interesting about this story is, man, when you moved east back to North Carolina, you moved to North Carolina from California. I mean, to work for Richard Petty Enterprises in their engine shop, and then to leave there when Richard and Kyle left, and then to go work on a pit crew on a team that only had 6 people, and Rusty Wallace was a race car driver. What people don't know, or a lot of them do inside the industry, but Mike Skinner can build his own race car. He knows everything about chassis setups, engineering. That's one of the things I was always impressed with you. You knew every aspect, how the race car worked, the geometry, the physics of a race car. And most race car drivers today don't have a clue how that kind of stuff works. And you could build your race car from the ground up and get in that race car and win with it. So that's pretty cool. And now I'm understanding why.
There's good and bad to what you just said, though. We knew every aspect of the race car. I built my own engines for quite a while, and then
Right.
Terry Elledge started building my engines before he moved back east. And it's crazy. But nowadays, the drivers, these young kids, and God bless them, but they spend their time in a simulator or on iRacing or with iPad, whatever. All they have to focus on is driving that race car nowadays. We had to understand the car. And I didn't have Larry McReynolds for a crew chief back then, or Gil Martin, or Jeff Hensley, or anybody that had all this knowledge. I had to basically go, man, we need to put some more caster in the left front.
Absolutely.
These cambers aren't working out, or if we put a little more bump steer in the right front, it won't be so loose getting in the corner.
Absolutely.
These kids they don't even think they know what bump steer is. So
No, they don't have a clue.
But they understand they have to drive the race car. So the good news for today's racing, that's all they have to focus on. And back then we had to do it because we had nobody else to do it for us. And
Absolutely.
We didn't have rich moms and dads or aunts and uncles to go buy the ride.
But you know what? I just watching you over the years and competing against you, you know exactly that communication you had with your crew chief and your engineer, if you had an engineer, you were a major part in how your trucks and race cars were set up, because you understand. And if you went in the corner, that thing was free, or wouldn't rotate in the center, or you didn't have very good forward bite, you knew you could tell them what you think the car needed. I think that was an advantage. It's always been an advantage for drivers that understand what they need. I think it's a big advantage in our sport.
Back then, it was way more important than it is today.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of funny, because I'll back up just a minute. And when I got ready to leave the team, because I didn't move to North Carolina to make Rusty Wallace famous. I moved to North Carolina so I would hopefully get a shot.
Absolutely.
And so I went in and talked to Darrell Bryan, and I said, Darrell, I'm gonna give you my 2 weeks notice, because I'm gonna start a body shop, and that way I'll have weekends off that I can go race late models or whatever. And he goes, man, we don't want to lose you. So what will it take? Can we give you more money? What will it take? And I said, well, there's only one thing that'll get me to stay here. And he goes, what's that? I said, I want Rusty's job. He said, well, I can't give you Rusty's job. Like, well,
that's typical Skinner. He asked and you told him. Absolutely. I love that, man. That's awesome.
Well, Mike, let me ask you, too, because a few years advances into 1986, and you get to run a few races with the Zandworth Racing team. How did that all come together?
Well, actually, I was riding my motorcycle down the street one day, heading towards Randleman, and I saw this old chassis out next to the road. And I'm like, I know what that's, an old third design Hal car. And I knew exactly, because I ran those cars. Mm-hmm. And so I just pulled in and started talking to the guy. And the guy's name was Reggie Newman. He had a body shop. And basically I said, hey, what are you going to do with that car? He goes, well, we're building that thing. I'm going to run it at Caraway Speedway. I'm like, well, wow, that's cool. When you start getting close, if you need any help setting it up, I know those cars pretty good. Maybe I could help you out a little bit. So they get the car built, and I went and helped them set the car up. We scaled it all out and went through all the front end geometry and got it, half-ass straightened out. And we went to Caraway, and Reggie was driving. And he would come in and say, well, it's doing this or it's doing that. And we'd work on the car. And finally, Reggie came in. He says, Mike, he says, would you take this car for a couple laps? Because I don't feel like I'm telling you what you need to hear to help the car. I'm like, sure. So I jumped in the car. My first lap on the racetrack was about 1.5 seconds faster than Reggie.
that's typical Skinner. That's Mike Skinner, Oh, hey.
And so I came in and he goes, oh man, you need to be driving this car. This is stupid. He said, I'm not driving this damn thing. I want you to drive it. Will you drive it for me? And that's how we got started. So we won a bunch of races at Caraway, and we were hated by a lot of people, which was always my goal.
Yes.
And the next thing you know, we decide we're going to build a cup car and try to go cup racing. So Reggie and I and another guy, we bought a chassis from Cecil Gordon.
Wow, Cecil Gordon.
Was with Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah.
And we had Barry Owen actually help us, and we hung a body on the thing. We had a Pontiac body, and we bought most of our stuff come from Petty's junk pile. We get stuff from there, and we built that car and went to Martinsville. And one of the coolest things that ever happened in my career, I made the race and watched about 6 or 7 tractor trailers pull out the gate that didn't make the race. And we pulled up there with an old rusted out 3/4 ton Chevy truck with egg crates with our spare parts that we stole from behind the grocery store.
Dude, what a great.
It was a pretty cool moment in time for me.
Man, Scudder, that's an awesome story, man. It's amazing how you did it, and with true passion and drive, and wanting to be who you turned out to be, and unbelievable. Just hearing these stories, that wouldn't happen in today's world of NASCAR racing, and it's just cool to hear your story. So how do you go from making that race at Martinsville, Virginia, and I don't know, 1984, 85, whatever year it was, to driving for Richard Childress Racing and being Dale Earnhardt's teammate, man? I know we're fast forwarding through a lot, but man, that's the ultimate, as far as I'm concerned. To be the Intimidator's teammate is only fitting for Mike Skinner, because I know who you are. You're the Intimidator yourself, so it's kind of interesting,
It was a cool chapter, because what had happened is we went broke trying to race, and I burnt the rear gear up at Martinsville. We had a used gear that we bought from the Petties.
Okay.
And we went to Rockingham, and we missed the show. I might have made the first race and missed the second race, but I missed the show by 1/1000th of a second. Ooh. Richard Petty beat me out at the last second.
Wow.
And I spent like $11,000 or $12,000 freshening up the engine. We sent the engine to Terry. Terry freshened the engine up, and it just broke me. We just couldn't race anymore. We were done. So sold that car, and I traded that car for an old Hal car and built a late model car, and said, I'll just go run Caraway. I'll prove myself somehow. And so we were winning a lot of races. Kevin Blank used to build a lot of race engines, late model engines. And I went to him and I said, hey buddy, I says, I ain't got any money. I said, but I need an engine. And I said, I don't know what can we do? How can we work this out? And he said, I don't finance anybody's engine. He said, but I've seen you drive. And he said, I'm going to help you. And so
that's cool.
He built the engine, and I gave him all the money I had. And every time I won, I'd send him $200 or $300.
Okay.
And so we were doing well, and we won a bunch. I think we won that year. I ran 22 races, and I won 11 of them and had 19 top 5 finishes out of the 22. So I had a pretty successful year driving my own car. And that's when, you remember David Hyder?
Oh, heck yeah, I remember David Hyder.
David Hyder and Gene Petty, Richard's first cousin, they come down there and they had a spaceship, man. He'd out-qualify me by half a second. And we had a big 300-lap race, and it came down to like a green-white checkered, and I used him up and won the race. I didn't wreck him, but I pushed him out of the way, and he was mad. And a few days later, I came home from the body shop, and there's Gene Petty sitting on my picnic table in my backyard.
Come on.
And I said, "How you doing, sir?" You know, I figured he was mad at me for beat the back bumper off his car.
Right.
And
hey, Mike, I think you call that putting a show on for the fans, right?
Whatever. I was just trying to win. I needed to win.
I hear you, buddy.
So he says, "Well, you took a piece of shit and you beat the hell out of us." And it was a big race. I think it might have paid 10 grand. It was 5 or 10 grand to win. It was a big deal for us.
Absolutely.
And so he goes, "Well, I want you to drive my race car." I said, "What are you gonna do with David?" He said, I'm gonna let him go. I want you to drive my race car." And he said, "What would it take?" And I said, "Well, I have a body shop," and I said, "I do all the paint matching and everything." And I said, I pay myself $300 a week." And he goes, "I'll give you $300 a week, and you come work on my race car and drive it." And so I started driving Gene Petty right then, and we won our very first race together. And he took his grandkids to Disney World. While he was gone, I cut 63 pounds out of his race car.
Hey, he can't be mad at you for making it lighter and faster and putting the weight where you needed it, you know? What a great story, though, man. You took
He was so mad. He was so mad when he came back. I thought he was going to fire me. And we ran 28 races that year. We ran 32 races, and I won 18 or 20 of them, and
that's amazing.
Had like 28 top 5 finishes. We just killed them. We won all the big races. We won Tri-County. We won Martinsville. We won Myrtle Beach.
Wow.
All the big paying races. We won them all. It was Pulaski. We ran good, and so I'll fast forward to get to where I got the call from Richard Childress.
Yeah.
Mike Dillon, which everybody knows Mike Dillon.
Yeah.
He had the Performance Parts sponsorship. It was the well-fundedest team in late models. And we were at New River Valley at Pulaski, and I was driving for Gene, and I was running about, third or fourth, and a big wreck happened. And a guy ran over the back of the car. His right front came in the car and hit me in the head with his right front, came across the hood, tore the air cleaner off, tore the car all to pieces, but it would still run. And he said, "Man, you got to get that thing in there." I said, "Gene, I can't, there's only like 5 laps to go. I can't give this position up." He goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Well, my head hurts, but I'm going to be okay." And he,
my head's still on my body, so I'm all right.
So the way Mike Dillon tells it, that I won the race, but I actually finished second or third. And
after the car was that damaged, Mike,
I just fought my ass off for the last 5 laps and stayed up there. And so anyway, Mike Dillon went back to Richard, and Terry Elledge was already a big fan of mine because he was for me, and I won a bunch of races with him. And Mike Dillon said, told Richard, said, "There's this guy named Mike Skinner. He's a crazy son of a bitch." He said, "That's the guy you want to drive your truck." And so I go back, and I'd already told Gene that I was going to leave the following year because I wanted to go bush racing.
Okay.
He said, "Well, we'll build a bush car. You're going to build it, though." And I'm like, "Okay." So we got a Laughlin chassis, and once again had Barry and some of those guys help us with the body. And we went to Charlotte, set on the pole. Well,
Wow.
Richard Childress came up to me and goes, "Well, I was going to ask you to drive my truck." I didn't even know what he was talking about. I didn't even know there was going to be a truck series.
Right.
I go back to the shop and I'm working one day and Richard calls. And I go to the phone. He goes, "It's Richard Childress." I'm going, wow, what's he calling me for? And I'd met him a couple of times at a car sale. And he goes, "I'm looking for somebody to drive the truck next year." Well, I said, "Well, if Earnhardt calls in sick, give me a ring, but I ain't got no interest in driving no damn truck." He goes, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "No." I thought he was talking about the transporter.
That's awesome.
Skinner, that's awesome, dude.
So we go to Indy. We go to Indy to the short track, and Dennis Setzer and I were up there wheel to wheel racing the hell out of each other. And
yeah.
And Gene was the spotter. Well, he ran me into a wreck. And I was so pissed. I just like, oh my God, I was so mad because I worked so hard. And we bought a couple of Harry Gansel cars from Leo Jackson.
Okay.
And so anyway, on the way back home, my ex-wife now, my wife at the time said, "Do you realize who's asking you to drive for them?" She goes, NASCAR's doing a truck series. I said, "What?" And so when I got back, I called Richard and I went over and kind of the rest is history. I got my big opportunity.
So Skinner, you're telling me you thought Childress was talking about the hauler, the truck,
Yes,
driving Earnhardt's cars to the racetrack, being the hauler driver.
Yeah.
And you turned him down.
Yeah, I hung up.
Dude, that's classic Skinner story right there now.
We're still friends. We're still friends to this day. Matter of fact, he called me just a little while ago.
Dude, that is awesome, man.
That
And
is
you're
great.
golly, man.
Let's Go Racing with David Starr. Truck Series legend Mike Skinner joins us on the program this week. So, Mike, you get to the Truck Series, 1995, the very first year of what was called the NASCAR Super Truck Series, and you won the championship. Tell us about that year in the inaugural season of the trucks.
It was crazy because we went to we missed the first winter heat race at Tucson.
Yeah.
We went to the second winter heat race, and we sat on the pole, which this will really shock David.
Yeah,
We sat on the pole by over a half a second.
What I tell you, they see it ain't just a little bit.
David, this is crazy. That race, and I'd never drank an O'Doul's in my life. I always drank beer.
Don't figure that.
We go back to the motel, and I'm in bed by 9 o'clock. I had an O'Doul's. I went to bed, shot a couple games of pool. I'm like, oh, this is my big opportunity. I'm not going to screw this up.
All right.
So we went and qualified on the pole, and when the race started, on lap 20, my spotter, Tim Overby, comes on the radio, and he goes, "Hey, the leader's about 20 back. You're going to get lapped if you don't pick it up a little bit."
Come on, Skinner. Seriously?
And I swear to God. And so thank God the caution came out. So we get the thing going. I think we ended up finishing the top 5, but we were terrible. And so anyway, we go back to welcome, and Richard says, "Well, how did you used to prepare for races?" I said, "Well, we chased women half the night. We drank. We were a bunch of renegades." He said, "Well, you can't smoke pot anymore. You're going to be a race car."
Skinner, that's hilarious, dude. Come on.
He said, "So I'm coming with you to the next winter heat race." I'm like, "All right." So Richard brings me out in his jet.
Wow.
We go and have a big steak dinner. We went and we caroused and we drank. I think he dropped me off the hotel at wee hours in the morning. I had to be at the racetrack in a few hours.
Come on, dude.
I showed up at the racetrack. I couldn't even see straight. I got in that truck and run practice, and we qualified 3rd, and I was devastated. I'm like, oh, my God, I'm so embarrassed. This is terrible. I mean, because I'm driving for Richard. I'm driving the G Goodwrench number 3. I think I should win every practice, every race, every pole. That was my mindset.
Absolutely.
So we qualified 3rd, and when that green flag dropped, we were out of here. We drove past them, and at one time we had everybody but second place a lap down, and we won the race and went back, and he goes, "Man, this is going to be tough." He goes, I can't come out there every race before the race and get drunk with you, buddy. He said, "You're going to have to find a happy medium somewhere."
Skinner, that's hilarious, man. Oh, God.
Then off to Phoenix we went, and one little story I got to tell in between there, because the first race, I called Ron Hornaday. I think Hornaday might have won that second winter heat race.
Right.
I called and said, Ron, man, I need some help. I'm terrible. He goes, well, yeah, you're qualifying every lap, and you got a bunch of horsepower, and you're just melting the tires.
Okay.
You're really fast for a little bit, but then he said, man, put an egg under that throttle. And Hornaday gave me some driving tips. I went back and won the next race, and he come to me and he goes, no more tips for you. You're on your own. The hell with it.
Skinner, that is funny. That's interesting, man. You know, because, man, I always came to Mike Skinner for driving tips. You know, hey, this is where I'm letting off. Am I driving too deep, not deep? You know what I mean? It's interesting that, you know, one of your major rivalry, Mike Skinner and Ron Hornaday, that he gave you some tips, so, man. And that was probably the last tip he ever gave you, wasn't it?
Well, he gave me a few tips after that, but it was not nothing to do that's going to help me go fast, I can tell you that. And we're awesome, really good friends to this day, which is really special to me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Wow. What a cool story. Wow.
Yeah. So you won the championship that year. Tell us about the process getting to that point. What was the feeling like when you guys got to the end and won that first truck title?
Well, it was tough because we went to Phoenix, and I qualified 16th because the engine broke while we were qualifying. And we didn't have to start in the back. We started 16th. And there was 7 Cup drivers in that race, by the way.
Wow.
And so I slit it. We fixed the engine. It broke some valve springs.
Okay.
Didn't have to change engines. We fixed the engine. Started 16th. We worked our way up through there. And I think two or three laps to go, I passed Terry Labonte, and we raced, and I was sideways off the corner, and we won the race. And then we went somewhere else, and we won, and we get to Bakersfield, and it's Hornaday and Sprout. Oh, we're all out there beating the hell out of each other. And Will Lynn started chewing my butt out. He goes, man, you knocked the nose off the damn thing. It's just practice. What are you guys doing, you know? And I said, well, Richard said he wanted somebody to drive the hell out of this thing, and I'm your guy. I'm going to drive it. I said, if you don't like it, I'm going to quit.
Oh.
And I actually went and called my wife and said, I'm going to quit. And she goes, that's okay. You're a hell of a race car driver. You'll get another job. She said, you'll be driving for Rick Hendrick or somebody else if you quit this job. I'm like, okay. So when we got back to Welcome, we went and sat down with Richard, and Richard basically told Rich Burgess, which was my crew chief.
Right.
And Willis said, listen, I hired this guy to do a job. I got confidence in it. If he comes in here and tells you to take the right rear spring out and put it in the left front, don't ask him no questions. Just do it.
Wow.
And let him go. We're going to give him enough rope to hang himself. And we went on and we won Bakersfield a week or so. The next time we went, whatever. And we won 8 races that year. And I don't know, we had a bunch of poles. I think we won 10 or 11 poles or something like that.
Man, Skinner, that's amazing that Richard Childress, I mean, isn't it wonderful when you have an owner that has all the confidence in the world in their driver and can have a conversation like that to the crew chief? Whatever my driver wants, because I have 110% confidence in him, you do what he wants. That's amazing, man.
It was, and I'll be honest with you, it was rocky for a while because we had the deck stacked. Our team we had the best team.
Absolutely.
I had a great crew chief. Will Lynn was an amazing manager and a life coach to me. You know, we had Todd Barrier was my shock guy. That's how
Todd Barrier.
We had Jesse Koch and Johnny Seiler. Jesse Koch was a famous chassis builder.
Absolutely.
Johnny Seiler, one of the best fabricators ever in the business.
Right.
We had the deck stacked. With Greg Meredith driving the truck, we had a bunch of really superstars on that team. And it would have made an amazing Cup or Xfinity team, for that matter, or Busch team at the time. But Richard just said, listen, give him a little time, let him hang himself. And then if stuff don't work, then he's going to listen to us. Well, then it got to the point where we found the happy medium where they would try my idea. And they didn't want to try my idea, they would tell me.
Absolutely.
And I'd go, okay, then let's do it your way. And if their way didn't work, then I'd say, okay, now we're going to do this. And we found a marriage there. We found a happy medium, and we spilled a lot of champagne that year. Yeah,
you did. No doubt about it, man. Unbelievable. That's cool to hear those great stories. So, Mike, we're going to fast forward a little bit. So, man, you know, as a driver in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series for a long time, and being a fan of yours and watching you, man, when you ran Cup, you were a tough competitor, you know, and all of us, if you know anything about our industry, you know that Mike Skinner, I mean, you know, people that know you and fans of yours know you're tough. You're a tough competitor. You're a fierce competitor. And I always heard all these stories about Earnhardt and Skinner. You know, it was like, you know, because, I mean, when somebody was going to pass you, you were tough, you know. And I don't think that ever changed, even being teammates with Dale Earnhardt. And I've always heard that he didn't appreciate, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I always heard that Earnhardt didn't appreciate how hard you ran the race car and how tough you were on the racetrack. Can you share some of that with us?
He hated it, and he didn't want a teammate. And and you know, why would he? He had won all those championships and did all his accomplishments without a teammate. This is when Roush and Cindric and all those guys were just starting to do two-car teams. And Richard, we were kind of some of the last superpowers to the party.
Okay.
And so Dale didn't like it. He didn't want no part of it. And then he probably raced me harder than anybody else. Maybe with the exception of Jeff Bodine. He didn't like Jeff. but anyway, it took a long time, and sadly enough, we were at Texas, and this was the year before he passed away, and
right.
Rusty was still driving, and we were in practice, and the 31 car was on top of the board.
Yep.
Well, the 3 car was 40th.
Wow.
And so it's like 10 or 15 minutes of practice, probably 15 minutes of practice left. And Richard got on the radio and says, hey, you guys are in pretty good shape, aren't you? I'm like, yeah, I don't know if it's going to race super good, but it's fast. And he goes, would you mind taking the 3 car for a couple laps? Says Dale thinks there's something wrong in the front end, and he wants you to make a couple laps in it. I'm like, sure.
Wow.
So I came in and got out, and I said, don't put no tires on it, because they were going to put tires on. I'm like, no, right. I want it just like the last time he drove it. So I go out, my very first lap, put the 3 car third on the sheet.
Oh, God.
Picked up 7/10 of a second. And
wow, Skinner.
Came back in, and Dale and Rusty came to the window, and Dale said, well, you sure made me look like an asshole. And I said, well, that's because you are. I said, but instead we've already got that established. Let's figure out why the car was faster. So I got out and I walked him through the lap and walked him through the entry into 3 and how we came to the green flag and what we did through 1 and 2. There's 5 minutes left in practice. He went back out there and picked up a half a second, was right, just right behind what I ran in it. And he came back and ran really good in the race. So that's the first time that I ever really got Dale's respect.
Right.
And from that moment on, our relationship totally changed. And it was such a horribly untimely time that he passed away the next year, because I really think that we would have been, now he was still going to race me as hard as anybody.
Absolutely.
But I really feel like that we finally figured out, hey, we can help each other.
Absolutely.
I think that would have made the team stronger, but unfortunately we didn't get that opportunity after Daytona.
Wow, that's wow, man. Thanks for sharing that with us. What a story, man. I can't. It's hard to fathom that Richard Childress came over the radio. Mike Skinner's at the top of the board, number 1 in practice, which is not surprising. What's surprising that the 3 car was almost dead last or close to it, and you jumped in that car. I mean, he just pulled in, no change in tires, no bolting on a set of stickers, no adjustments. You jump back in Dale Earnhardt, number 3 Goodwrench Chevrolet, and you take that thing all the way up to 3rd on the board, 7/10 quicker. That's amazing, Mike. And it's amazing that how y'all talked about how you got on the racetrack and you came to the green, and just telling him how you did it, and he backed that up. That's amazing, man. That's what people don't understand. Why I used to come to Mike Skinner and ask him all the time, pick his brain and ask him about this and that, because dude, you know what every racetrack is. I mean, you know what every racetrack you need and how you need to run the racetrack, how you get up to speed quick. I mean, you're just good. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting that you gave what I know about Mike Skinner to Dale Earnhardt, and it helped him. That's very interesting, man. I appreciate you sharing that. It's a pretty cool story.
And then to add to that, David, you look at what Mike was able to do with the car, getting the most out of it, getting all that speed and everything. Dominic, I mean, the records that Mike had reflected that.
Absolutely, Tyler. And I mean, Mike, I don't know if you're aware of these records, but I mean, we've looked, and you do hold some Cup records. I mean, for better or for worse, right? Most laps led without a Cup win, most poles without a win. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, 1,029 laps led, and then I think it was 6 poles without a win, and then leading the lap, or the most laps in a Cup Series race without a win. He did that 4 times. I know that was tied with Banjo Matthews. So, I mean, there are some Cup records that you certainly hold.
We were probably the best team that just couldn't get the final straw, the final deal. And we sat on the pole and dominated several races. Man, we were at Atlanta, and I was just playing with them, and just had the race won. It was like under 20 laps to go, and a $5 rod bolt broke, and we go to Martinsville. We're dominating the race. No way we were going to be beat that day. Our car was so good. A piece of rubber got in the alternator and killed the battery. I mean, these stories go on and on and on. I got a 6-second lead at Pocono, 6 laps to go. A cigarette butt fell on a racetrack somewhere, I guess. The NASCAR needed a caution, so we got one.
Oh, man.
Every car came in behind me and put tires on. I was the only guy out there without tires. It just like these stories, I could tell you 10 more of them. And it's just like I have nothing to be ashamed of. We were very, very competitive. We won every non-points race you could win. We won Japan 2 out of the 3 times that we went there. We'd win Charlotte. We'd win Daytona. As a matter of fact, when we got to Daytona, Dale and I go out in a rent-a-car, and he's going around there, and he's like, okay, you see this part of the racetrack right here? He says, this is right where you got to run. He goes, it's not going to feel good right there. And he goes, you can run right here for 10 laps, but you're going to get the right front tire wore down, and then the thing's going to be push and then get loose, late exit.
Right.
You drove Daytona enough to feel it and know what that feeling is.
Absolutely.
And he goes, so you're just going to have to change your line early. When everybody else's stuff is starting to wear out, you're still going to have a right front tire left. And they'll be faster, for a little bit, but then you'll be okay. Well, we won the dual race. I beat Dale Jr. by a foot, and so we just learned so much. And it was like, we were well underway to becoming a 2-car team that was going to be significant. And sadly enough, I really feel like that although everybody thinks they saw the best of Dale Earnhardt Sr., I think that Dale Earnhardt Sr. probably had another championship in him.
Wow.
And there's no question in my mind that Dale Sr. was going to win 4 or 5 races that year, because he was focused. We'd both actually been in the gym, and we were trim, and we were putting Maori metal in our pockets to make weight when we got there, because they weigh the drivers. So, they didn't make a trip back then. So we cheated our ass off. We were both 192 pounds, but we went across the scales at 201 and 202.
That's amazing, Skinner. Wow.
We just worked it, and we were ready to go, and then we lost him.
Unbelievable, man.
So,
Unbelievable.
Mike, maybe you can kind of attest to this too. I mean, I remember hearing or at least reading that maybe the long-term plan at RCR through the mid-2000s was to have you there in the 31, Dale to retire about 2002, 2003, bring Jeff Burton and Kevin Harvick. And what can you say about all that?
That was never a plan until after Dale's death.
Yeah.
That was never a plan. There was never a plan for Dale Earnhardt to retire until Dale Earnhardt said he was done. And so that wasn't the case. And Richard and I are still good friends. I think Richard wanted me there for till the end of my career. I really felt like I'd be sweeping the floors over there as an old man. It didn't work out that way, and it's sad. But, I had a couple really horrific crashes. I had a terrible crash at Atlanta, 2 of them at Texas, and then a horrible wreck at Chicago. I had like bad concussions. And back then there was no protocol. So I got back in the car, didn't even know where the hell I was at half the time.
Wow.
And it
Amazing,
basically really shortened up my Cup career. A couple of years ago, Richard and I was sitting out here on my back porch, and we were chatting, and I said, and I'd started driving my son's late model, and I was winning everything I ran. And he says, I said, it's sad. I'm probably a better race car driver than I've ever been, but I'm too damn old to do anything about it.
But, Skinner, you mentioned that, and I tell everybody today, Hornaday, Mike Skinner, they could jump into any NASCAR race car today, and I would put money they could still win, given that the right equipment, right people behind it. No doubt about it, man.
So, David, I got to tell you one of and everybody asked me, what's some of the coolest stuff you ever done in a race car? Well, I drove A.J. Foyt's Indy car at Phoenix.
Dude, that's
that
awesome,
was one of the
man.
coolest things I'd ever done. And I run wide open, like 200 miles an hour through the corner through 3 and 4 at Phoenix.
Dude,
that was what a rush of all rushes. But I got one that topped it.
Okay.
I drove my son's. I drove the race at Bristol.
Yeah.
It was the U.S. Short Track Nationals.
Okay.
And I drove my son's car, and I held it wide open for 3 laps.
Come
Never
on.
touched the brakes, and run a 14:70 or 80. It was faster than the Cup pole had been the prior race that Kyle Busch had set on the pole. And that was one of the coolest things I ever done in a race car is run that late model around there. You talk about your knees shaking and the hair standing up on the back of your neck.
Oh my God, Skinner. I can't believe that the car would let you do that. Y'all got a good piece there.
One of the coolest. That car is fast.
Dude, that's amazing. So Mike, yeah, unbelievable, man. Go ahead, Dominic.
No, I was just wanting to ask Mike, now that you know about those records in the Cup Series, are you hoping somebody breaks them?
Hell no. I mean, no, actually I do. I don't nobody should be that dominant without winning a race.
Absolutely.
And it was just horrible luck. And a lot of it was my fault because I overdrove the car. I wasn't disciplined enough. And in today's time, that's how you got to drive those cars. Back then, it was more of a chess game, and the tires wouldn't hold up to what I was trying to put the tires through. And we broke a lot of right front tires. And, blowing the tire at Texas in 12 laps, that wasn't my fault. The tire came apart.
Absolutely.
It ran over something. I don't know. But blowing a tire on lap 30 because you overdrove the car, that was my fault. And
Absolutely.
So, I had to learn some discipline that I really didn't have at that time. I just drove the car for everything it was worth. Like Hornaday said, I was qualifying every lap. And I don't think you can do that. In today's world, you pretty much almost have to do it like that. But back then, you couldn't. The tires are better. The walls are softer. The cars are better.
Yeah.
So much more information that we have now that will keep the tires from blowing out.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, Mike, I got one more question, and then we'll get to our NASCAR News and Notes and our questions from listeners here in just a moment. But I'm going to show my age here for a second, Mike. I started watching NASCAR. I'm 24. I started watching NASCAR about 2004. And so I'll be honest, I don't remember your Cup career, but I do remember those Friday nights turning on Speed Channel and seeing you racing in the Truck Series and the show that you guys put on every single week. That second run that you had when you went back to finish your career in trucks was just phenomenal. Take us through those days of racing for Bill Davis and Randy Moss and some of those guys there towards the end of your career.
Well, basically, I had, and I got to thank Jay Fry for this. MB2 Racing back then, they had the U.S. Army car, and Jerry Nadeau had a horrible crash. I think was at Richmond, and he was hurt. And so they started putting, I'm not going to mention names of other drivers in the car. Well, they weren't making races, and they knocked themselves out of the points, and that was before they had charters. And so Jay Fry called me up, and he said, and I was doing starting parks and stuff for people, just like bottom feeding at that point in time. I was making money doing it, so it was okay. I was still making a living. And he says, man, he goes, I got to get somebody who can get this car in the show. And he goes, I don't know anybody in the sport that's a better qualifier than you. So would you come drive for us? And they offered me a really good salary for doing that. There was a lot of financial reasons that I needed to do that.
Right.
And we started running up front, getting top 5 finishes, sitting on the pole and leading races. And so Jay's tells it, we resurrected each other's careers. So we helped MB2 show to the world, because they had Hendrick cars and Hendrick motors. Those cars were badass.
Yes.
And it helped resurrect my career, because I got back in first class equipment and ran up front like I knew I could. And so that was a really cool period of time. What happened was the U.S. Army would only sign 1 year at a time. And so they said, Rick Hendrick was trying to find a place for Joe Nemechek, and the team wanted me in the car, but they give me a 1 year deal. That's about the time Toyota came along. They offered me really good money and a 3-year deal and a home. And they just basically said, we need a veteran. We want you to help us bring Toyota in NASCAR, and you're our guy. And I went, all right. And so I got to race less races. I got to spend a lot of my Sundays on the golf course or out at the pool, and I made really good money, and I could win. I could run up front again. And I didn't get into racing to say that I ran 600, 800, 900 cup starts, whatever. I didn't care about that. I got in racing to win. I always wanted to win. And when I got back in that truck, I could win. And it was a decision that we had to make, and I don't regret it.
That is awesome. That's great. Guys, a couple more things before we get out of here today. Let's go through some NASCAR news and notes. We'd love to hear from you, Mike, just what you have to say about some of the ongoing things in NASCAR leading up here to the Daytona 500. Dominic, what do you got for us?
Well, every week on the show, we take a look at the top NASCAR news and headlines from around the sport, get everybody's reaction. So with Austin Cindric announcing that he's going to attempt this year's Daytona 500, that puts the entry list field at 45 cars for this upcoming 500. The Great American Race hasn't had that many entries since 2015, since NASCAR moved to the charter system in 2016. So, guys, only 40 cars will make the 500, but we have at least 5 going home that we know of. Could be more announced.
Well, you also have Jamie McMurray coming back.
Absolutely.
And Derek Cope, Daytona 500 winner, is going to try to make it. I worry about the equipment that Derek will be in. But those guys are all real deal drivers. And Austin is the future. He's an amazing kid, amazing driver, very focused, great background, great family. And got Roger Penske's eye. So he's got a bright future. And I think that anything can happen in restrictor plate racing. Only thing that they really need to focus on is laying down a good enough lap that no matter what happens in the dual race, that they're guaranteed in the race. So they really got to focus on that. They can't have a plug wire come off.
Mike, you've run a lot of these Daytona 500s over the year. Certainly, of course, there's 40 drivers in the field, but realistically, how many do you think can actually have a shot at winning the 500?
Restrictor plate racing is a big equalizer. And I'm going to bring up a name that I have a lot of respect for his ability on restrictor plate races. Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace was a great restrictor plate racer. You could have a dark horse like that, somebody like that, get in the show and win it. Jamie McMurray has won this race. He could be serious. He could be a threat to win this race. But there's 8 to 10 guys that seem to be the guys that find their way when it's go time to the front. And I remember when Kurt Busch won it a few years ago, I think it might have been Kyle Larson or somebody was leading it, and it was like 10 laps to go. And I told the people we were with, I said, Kurt Busch is going to win this race. And they're like, why you say that? I said, because he has lost it 4 or 5 times like I did, be in the wrong place, wrong time, wrong line, whatever. He's made all those mistakes. He knows what to do, and he won it.
Well, real quick, guys, when you look at this, I think there's about 3 guys that kind of separated themselves when it comes to plate racers. Obviously, Denny Hamlin win back-to-back 500s. Chase Elliott's been great. Ryan Blaney's been great. Those guys, I would say those are probably your favorites. But then you look at, you mentioned some of those guys, maybe a David Reagan of some sorts. Of just this entry list, David, there's going to be good drivers that miss the 500. I mean, there's some of the best moments over the years of the 500 and the duels, David, have been just the fight to even make the Daytona 500.
Well, we've seen that over the last 2 or 3 years. Some of the Cinderella stories, one that just comes to mind recent, I think the last year or two, Carl Long has 2 entries. Timmy Hill, I think Timmy Hill made the Daytona 500 last year. Obviously in a way underfunded team, unfunded car, equipment's not all there that you need. And to drive your way into the Daytona 500 just to be in that race, it's special, man. It's special. Skinner can tell you how special it is. He's had a shot at winning it, but just to be able to be in the Daytona 500, I mean, it's a career changer. It's those are dream things, and I think you're going to see that. There's going to be maybe some good Cinderella stories coming out of Daytona after the dual 125s. So I think it makes it interesting. I like it that there's not just 40 cars, there's 45, 46 cars trying to make the race, because it puts a little drama in qualifying. It puts a little drama into the duels 125s. There's a lot of meaning there. So it makes the races more interesting for us that aren't participating in it to see who's going to make it and who's not. So, it's I'm excited about it. And like Mike was saying, talk about Austin Cindric, driving for Roger Penske. I mean, he's awesome. He's a great driver. Like you heard Mike talk about him, his future is going to be so big in our sport, and whether he makes it or doesn't make it, I can't imagine him not making it, but there's always that chance that he doesn't. But still, however it turns out for him, his future in NASCAR racing is going to be big.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no question about it. Dominic, what else we got?
Last story we got, so Las Vegas Motor Speedway still, we have a few weeks out after the Daytona 500 for the Vegas race, but the track's still not sure if they're going to be able to have fans at the facility for NASCAR race weekend in early March. They weren't able to have fans at the September race in September 2020 after submitting a plan to the state and local officials. Still not really sure if they're going to be able to have fans for the spring race, but if they are able to have fans, we'll certainly pass along the information here on the show.
Yeah, and the Raiders there in Vegas did not get to have fans all season there. So, guys, I know you love Vegas and that track and such. It wouldn't be the same if we don't get to have fans there, would it?
I think that I'm going to be very excited when we have fans back, but I think that we don't need to be too anxious and too rambunctious about that. Let's get a handle on this pandemic, so when we do open it back up, it can get back to normal. We were talking on our show yesterday about, a lot of these drivers are going to come complacent. They don't have to do the interviews they were doing. They don't have to do a lot of the stuff. One of the things that NASCAR has always had the reputation of, and David Starr is one of the best ever at this, the race car drivers and the owners and they're accessible. They're accessible to the fans. You can walk up and shake David Starr's hand at a race. You can walk up and get Jimmy Johnson's autograph before he retired. We didn't speak about Kevin Harvick. He can win that race. These guys are accessible, and they're accessible to the media. They're accessible to the fans. We cannot let that go in the past. We got to get that back like it was. So if we have to be a little bit more patient for a while till we get a handle on this pandemic, then so be it. But I look forward to it getting back to normal at some point.
Absolutely, Mike. I totally agree with you. We don't want to do it too early, but man, our sport's built on the race fans, our sponsors, being able to bring them inside the garage area, show them that experience, the engagement, introducing them to other sponsors in the garage. I mean, it's important to get the race fans back and be able to bring our partners and everybody come back to what we know as a normal race weekend. But like hearing what Mike is saying, we don't want to do it too early, because if we do it too early and it doesn't work out, it could be different, could hurt our sport for the future. So I totally agree with what Mike's talking about and what he's saying.
Yeah, that's for certain. Guys, last segment before we get out of here today, time for Ask David segment. We ask you to submit your questions to us on Facebook and Twitter. Check us out there at Starr Podcast. Also via email, davidstarrpodcast@gmail.com. You can reach us there. And I got a couple questions for David and Mike. Let's start with Facebook. This one's from Junior, not Dale Jr., just somebody named Junior. Junior writes, what's Mike Skinner's real name? It's not Mike Skinner. Mike, is your name really Mike Skinner?
No.
No.
It is Mike Skinner. I had to change my name legally to Mike Skinner to get a passport to go to Japan when we went to Japan and raced. My God-given name was Mike Quick. And what a great racing name that would have been if I would have just known I was going to be a race car driver. But my mother and father got divorced when I was a small child, and my mother remarried a guy named Bill Skinner. And I took Bill's name. And we never legally changed my name, believe it or not, until the first year we went to Japan. I don't know, it was 97, 98, sometime back in then. And so I had to legally change my name to Mike Skinner. Oddly enough, I had been married under Mike Skinner. I had 2 children. Their name were Skinner. My Social Security was Skinner. But I found a deal where it really wasn't. But if I would have known I was going to be a race car driver when I was a small child, I would have never changed my name, because Mike Quick was definitely a better race car driver's name than Mike Skinner.
Skinner, I got to tell you that only Mike Skinner could get away with that. His real name is Mike Quick, but he gets married. His son's Jamie Dustin Skinner, and legally that wasn't your name. You know what I mean? That's amazing, man. What a cool story, dude. I never knew that. Wow.
Did you know that?
Dale Jr. lost it when I told him. They go, what?
Oh, man, unbelievable. But you know what? I mean, Mike Quick. I mean, Mike Skinner. It's the same to me. Fast Mike. You know what I mean? Hell, you're always, it's fitting. Mike Quick. Who would have known that, man? Wow, I never knew that. Skinner.
I thought Mike Skinner was a great name for a truck series driver. Like, I think when I think of truck series, I think Mike Skinner, Dominic, I had no idea. Did you know that?
I had no idea. So you all broke some news to me on today's show. They say you never stop learning. Well, this is clearly some evidence of that.
Skinner, we all think we knew you pretty well. We don't know you that well, buddy. That's okay. Wow.
So something you didn't bring up, and it's funny because I got this crazy nickname, the Gunslinger. How that came about was crazy because we sat on the pole and led every lap at somewhere. And the color guys in the booth, one of them said, I got out of the truck and I jumped up on the back and I pulled my guns out and shot in the air. And they interviewed me. They said, what was that about? I said, man, it was just such an exciting day. And, we sat on the pole, we dominated. We just basically shot them down today. We shot the competition down. and one of the guys in the booth said, "He's the gunslinger." And that's how that came about. That wasn't something that I did or a PR person did or a manager. It was just
how it played out
for the moment.
And then after that, every week they introduced me. They started calling me the gunslinger. It was crazy.
Dude, that's a cool story, Mike. I love that. Wow. I've always wondered where that came from. That's
a great way to get a nickname. You didn't give it to yourself or
No.
anything like
No.
that. That's the way it ought to be done. One more question for you. This one comes from Mike on Twitter at MikeAda09133075. That's a lot of numbers.
You a prisoner?
Yeah.
That's his phone number, maybe.
PR549.
PR549.
Mike from prison wants to know, Mike, are you doing any kind of racing these days?
Oh, yeah.
Well, for Christmas, my son Jamie said, "Hey, you want to drive the Red Eye at New Smyrna Beach and drive one of our old cars?" And I'm like, "Sure." What a great Christmas present my son gave me. And we went down there and we practiced. We were super fast. We were super fast in every practice. Really, we never made a qualifying run. And David's going to flip out about this, but I just really screwed up qualifying really bad.
I don't believe that.
And we didn't qualify well, and we had to start back in the pack a little ways, and we got to second place with plenty of time left, but believe it or not, never got a caution. And Brad May had stretched it out about 2 seconds out there, and I was a little faster, but I'd never got that caution in order to get up there. So we finished second, so it was kind of disappointing for me.
So, Skinner, hearing that story, too bad it wasn't your cup day, because there would have cost you would have came out.
Of course, yeah.
Of course, you know what I'm saying? But man, that's cool. That just goes to show you still got it, buddy. You still got it. No doubt about it.
Oh, I love it. That's great to hear. Guys, we're out of time. We appreciate you joining us. Make sure to subscribe to Let's Go Racing with David Starr. New episodes out each and every Tuesday on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and also on YouTube. And we would certainly love to hear from you. And also follow us on social media at Starr Podcast, Facebook, Twitter, and we would love to hear from you guys there. Mike, what all you got going on? You got the Sirius XM show. I know you're active on social media. Where can people see all what you got going on, man?
Well, my wife is way more active on social media than I am, but I look forward to Speed Weeks. My sons are going to be they're running Jade and JP from Canada during Speed Weeks. Jamie's liable to get in the car a couple nights. He always likes to get in there and show everybody he can still win, and he's still got it.
Apple didn't fall too far from the tree, did it?
Yeah, we'll be doing that, and we got a new Prevost Featherlight bus that we're going to go do some touring around in and have a little fun with that. We're heading to Naples, Tampa tomorrow, and then Naples. Going to go play a little pickleball with my buddy Tom Berenger, the movie actor, good friend of mine. Going to go play a little golf with our friends in the mountains, probably lose a little money. Hopefully I win some money. But I do have one request. You need to send me some of them David Starr Let's Go Racing stickers. I'll make sure they get on that. I'll make sure they get on the race cars for Speed Weeks.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure that happens.
Man, Skinner, what an honor it's been, man. You always been a class act and always been helpful to me, man. But man, it's cool. Our fans, we really appreciate it. You sharing lots of great stories that I've just learned about and everybody's learned about. We love hearing these great stories, and man, what an honor it's been to have you on our show. Thank you so much for joining us.
You bet, guys, and pry this out of David in the next episode or two. Let him tell a story. He was my teammate, by the way. We were teammates on the same team for a while.
Absolutely.
We got to race each other and be on the same team.
That was really cool, man. That was a big honor on my part to be able to race with my hero, Mike Skinner, and we drove for Randy Moss. I mean, we could have another podcast about all that.
We're going to need to have another podcast to hear some of those stories.
No, that was awesome, man.
We need to get Randy on the show. Tell us about it.
Mike, you work on that.
That's okay.
Oh,
That's what I thought you would say.
Randy's a good guy.
oh gosh, that's too funny.
Yeah,
David,
yeah.
we mentioned you're counting down the days to Daytona, man, and we should have an announcement here pretty soon on the show.
Man, I hope so, man. Daytona's right around the corner, and I've been working hard. I won't be able to sleep tonight just because I'm so stressed, but hopefully here the next day or two, we'll have some great news about our 2021 NASCAR season. So I'm looking forward to that, and looking forward to getting to Daytona and getting our season kicked off. That's for sure.
Very good. Dominic, what's going on with the racing experts?
We're still following the daily news of the sport, so we keep our riders, everybody follows the breaking news, and we end up writing and making sure we keep the NASCAR fans informed. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for, informed. So keep a look out there. And Twitter.com, we have our giveaways at the Racing Experts, NASCAR merchandise. All you got to do is just give us a like and follow, and we'll take care of you if you win. And like we said at the top of the show, if any of you would like some Let's Go Racing with David Starr stickers, while supplies last, just shoot us an email, davidstarrpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get you taken care of, again, while supplies last.
There we go. There you have it. We appreciate that, guys. We got to run. We'll see you right back here next week as we're just getting closer and closer to the Daytona 500. For Mike Skinner, David Starr, Dominic Aragon, I'm Tyler Jones, putting the checkered flag out on this episode of Let's Go Racing. We'll see you next week.